today's webinar. We have some great content to get through today, so hopefully you've dedicated your hour to learning. Today's webinar is called The 5 Steps to Tactical Social Selling. We have a guest speaker today, Jonathan Cately from AG Salesworks. Can you hear me, John?
I can, Coca.
All right. So I said we have Jonathan Cately. He works with AG Salesworks. He is responsible for the digital content and marketing for the company. Jonathan, how long have you been there with AG Salesworks?
I've been here at AG for about 2 years now. We specialize in really prospecting for the IT industries and work with multiple companies, Fortune 500 to startups in that area. So prospecting is very near and dear to us, and so the social prospecting or social selling is definitely becoming a main component for us. So I'm excited to be on here today, and thank everybody for joining us, and hope everybody really finds it informative and walks away with learning something new.
Outstanding. As I said, my name is Coca Sexton. For those of you that are not familiar with Social Selling University, it's kind of an offshoot of InsideView. InsideView is a sales intelligence application that basically feeds you the information, the intelligence you need on your customers and target accounts. Social Selling University is focused on teaching salespeople. It's the educational arm, I like to speak of InsideView, that teaches salespeople better prospecting techniques, how to leverage social media in a sales environment. We're really spearheading this effort around social selling. So we love engagement. Again, Social Selling University, so we like things to be social. Feel free to keep in contact with us during the webinar using the hashtag SocialTalk. We'll be monitoring that. Sign up for Social Selling University if you have not. It's at socialsellingu.com, and you'll get regular updates on best tips and best practices that we come across, and you'll be able to read the blog, and there's a lot of great content. AG Salesworks contributes content to the blog, and they have some really great content that gets put into there. The slides and the recording will be delivered tomorrow. So after this webinar, we take it, package it all up, and then you'll get an email. So if there's any questions about if you're going to be able to use this as a reference material, this will be sent off to you. This is what we're going to cover today. So today we're going to talk about understanding the social selling basics. So what is social selling? What tools should you use? We've got some great examples of tools, and I know that Jonathan is able to talk about some of the tools that they use there. And then we're going to let Jonathan talk about social selling prospecting, how to leverage social media for prospecting, and talk about nurturing of these people. And then we're going to go through some case studies around the ROI of social selling. That's something that I think a lot of people are really interested in, because a lot of companies are trying to figure out, hey, there's a lot of talk around social media in the sales force, but does it actually produce results? And there are some great case studies that we're going to go through that are going to be able to illustrate those for you. So number one, let's start off with understanding social selling basics. So what is social selling? So as you all know, buying behavior has changed. Even as much as just a couple of years ago, there's been a shift in the way that buyers, deal with vendors. The only way that we used to be able to communicate with decision makers used to be through phone or email, and before email, it was just phone or in person. And technology has really taken off, and some of the best web conferencing platforms out there have some really strong positioning around why web conferencing, for example, is very good at keeping in touch with your prospects, because you no longer have to travel. So as technology has kind of been developed and the evolution has taken place, social media has really been ingrained in our society. And it's not beyond a salesperson's use to leverage social media in a way that, one, builds relationships, drives new pipeline, and cultivates upsells and more revenue for your company. Some interesting stats around B2B use in social media is that 60% of B2B decision makers use social media, and not just that they use it as a personal thing. These decision makers are leveraging social networks to make decisions. And 75% of them will likely use social media in that purchasing process. So they will engage directly with other customers of the vendor or with the vendor themselves through a social platform. And then 55% of B2B survey respondents conduct searches for information on social media sites. And many of you on the call are probably very familiar with this. You have a problem, there's something that you want to solve or something that you want to tackle as a business initiative. You go into a group or you go into some other forum and you do a search and say, who else is having this issue? And then you start building relationships with people in that community. So let's look at some numbers around what social media is doing. Twitter reaches 1 in 10 global users online. One out of every 5 minutes is spent on a social networking site. Many people are leveraging, sites like LinkedIn and Twitter. In fact, we've got some interesting case studies that aren't in this deck, but we've been able to find some that people have actually leveraged a platform like Facebook. Social media is one of these things that is continuing to grow, and I think all of you are aware of this. And we like to put things in really simple buckets, so we call these the 3 pillars of social selling, which is listen, build your brand, and know your client. Craig Rosenberg, he's a friend of InsideView. He puts it like this. He says, instead of calling it social selling, let's just, for the people who are adverse to the term social selling, let's just call it selling, but better. And we'll go into some details on this, but this is why the ROI is hard to calculate. Most companies just haven't figured it out yet. There's no clear boundaries between selling and social selling. Many of the social selling tenets are regular selling best practices. Many of the things that you're already doing as a salesperson can be translated very easily into a social network. And it's not a direct response activity. So in many B2C types of engagements online, it's, hey, click this link for 20% off, or whatever the case may be. In B2B sales, transactional business is not very normal. I mean, are you finding that as well, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's very similar to what you're saying, exactly.
So let's talk about some tools and what the tools are. And I want to open it up. So if you guys have tools that you use, feel free to type them in the chat box and we can bring those up as well. But these are the tools that we've kind of identified as being some of the best out there when it comes to leveraging social media. Obviously, I feel like InsideView is one of these better tools. You can build lists. You can create watch lists, which is a way of getting fed information. And then you can get social insights. One of the great things about our product that a lot of our customers and many of our customers on this call leverage is the fact that when you're building a list, you can say specifically, give me VPs of marketing that have Twitter profiles within specific demographics, and our database will show you that information. We're the only application that can do that. Another application that I'm very fond of is one called Sprout Social. Sprout Social is a social media client that can leverage LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and a couple others. And what you're able to do is basically pull all of your social streams into one view and then be able to have engagement through them. It's great for lead generation. We're able to use the Discovery tab to search for information. We'll go into some more detail around that. So you're looking for specific keywords. We're also able to get analytics. For teams that leverage social media, for let's say you have a sales team that's leveraging social media, one of the things that a sales manager is going to want to focus on is it being effective? Is what my team doing actually generating traffic? Is it creating leads? And outside of your CRM, Sprout Social has a very good analytics platform that's able to show you this stuff. And then they also have deeper insights. So if you have a profile for somebody that mentions something about a competitor or your company online, as a salesperson, you're able to find out where else this person is located online to kind of get a better feel for what these people are into. And 3 is HootSuite. I'm a big fan of HootSuite. It is a Twitter client that, I think they have 12 or 15 different clients that they can plug into with different platforms. But it's very easy to use because it's in this dashboard format that you can set up streams. So we are able to set up streams for the brand and then specific keywords and monitor conversations in real time. You're able to bulk schedule the messages. So as a salesperson, you don't want to have to send out one tweet every day on your own or multiple tweets a day. You can schedule these things out. HootSuite makes this very easy for you to do. And it makes it very easy to multitask between different social media platforms. So you don't have to bounce between different sites like Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook to get things done. You get everything in one view, which makes HootSuite a very good application for you to be using. So how do you find leads?
Okay,
Jonathan, you can take over from here?
Yep, utilizing social prospecting. So first we got to throw out a few more stats here in regards to basically your prospects are all going to be talking on the internet, whether it's through blogs, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or specialty niche social communities. So, and this kind of reflects that a little further, where you see, you know, in Europe 80%, in the U.S. 86% of adults are online using social media outlets. What I really find fascinating was the reach for social networking, which shows that about 82% of the world's online population, which is equal to about 1.2 billion users, is able to be reached through social networking outlets. LinkedIn, which you'll hear me talk about a lot, especially, boasts more than 150 million members. But the main thing here is that what you're finding when it comes to prospecting is that a lot, if not all, of the Fortune 500 companies, their executives are on LinkedIn. So when you're looking for prospecting tools, this obviously is going to be a major asset to any sales rep. And then the last stat, which Coca already kind of touched on, whereas 1 in every 5 minutes is spent online now around the world on social networking sites. And I really expect that number to increase as the use of smartphones and social sites is increasing. You're going to see probably that go up to 2 or 3 out of every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, especially within a business environment, I see this number increasing exponentially. You know, from our own usage stats at InsideView, we've seen that over year, even with the customers growing, that we know that these customers are spending more and more time within these networks. And I know that LinkedIn obviously has some great stats around it, but I think that, you know, leveraging social media from a business perspective is just going to continue to grow. It's actually an exploding business if you look at kind of the industry and what kind of new apps are being developed on almost a daily basis if you keep up on the news.
Yeah, and again, with social media, it's an ever-changing environment. You know, one day it could be one thing, and then as new technologies come out, you know, that environment and landscape is constantly evolving.
All right.
So when we talk about social prospecting, which, you know, first question is, well, what is social prospecting? And really what it is utilizing social networks to identify new or likely buyers that are in your market. You collect and store their social data and then segment or prioritize those people according to what kind of criteria you've already established, whether it be prospects, companies, competition. And what companies are doing is they're leveraging social intelligence, and what that is really being able to monitor or capture, store, analyze, and use customer data that they've captured from numerous social media sites and instill that as part of their customer management activities. And I know you, Coca, you've already touched upon InsideView and some of the capabilities that has in drawing from those sites. The other aspect of social prospecting is not only leveraging social networks to identify key targets, target accounts or decision makers, but it's also utilizing the data and the intelligence that's extracted from these sites to engage with your targets in a real-time fashion. And sorry, if you stay on this slide for a second there, Coca, the power of being able to respond in real time is really illustrated in that first stat that came from InsideSales.com. That shows that 35 to 50% of the sales go to the vendor that responds first. So again,
and the only way to get that is by monitoring this, and like I said before, is listening, right?
Correct. You got to be able to monitor it. You got to listen to what's being said out there, and then engage. Which, you know, and this showing again, if you're one of the first to engage, then your chances of closing a deal or getting a sale is going to go up exponentially. That last stat that's on there from Serious Decisions kind of also reflects on one that you had shared earlier, Coca, about 55% of surveyed respondents conduct searches for info on social sites. So this leads into why the buyer's journey is now so far down the sales funnel when it gets, or so far down the funnel, I should say, when it gets to the sales process, because there's so much ease of access to information using social sites now that the buyers are able to go and pull or extract what they want as far as info. So when they do actually engage with you, they're pretty informed on what the product is and what they're looking for. So I think on the next slide there, I think we have a graph, coming from the Aberdeen Group. They did a study, as you see there, in February of 2012, in which they looked at harnessing social media analytics and the impact on sales effectiveness. So a couple of reasons why I wanted to show this is just to, again, reiterate why you should be online using social media sites to extract the social intelligence. And what you're seeing here is this is really showing the year-over-year benefit or performance gains by companies that are using social customer intelligence tools or have initiatives in place and putting them in with their sales process. What you're seeing here, and especially in that first number, the companies supporting their sales reps with account information that is captured through social outlets, are outperforming those that don't across many of the key measurements, including annual company revenue. Another key gain from using social intelligence tools is you're going to see a higher percentage of your sales team attaining their quotas. Customer satisfaction, you see an increase, as well as the average margin of profit per customer. One experience that I've had personally regarding customer satisfaction, we were monitoring social media for a client, and somebody had tweeted out a negative comment in regards to this client's software, which was an automated scheduling tool, but basically saying it didn't work. So I was able to capture that within 5 minutes of this gentleman tweeting it, get it over to the appropriate department, and not only did they fix the problem, they saved the account, but then they also reaped the benefits of his positive tweets afterwards, talking about the response, the customer service, the quality of the customer service, and being able to respond in such a quick fashion. So utilizing social tools or social media and social prospecting itself really is going to have an impact across the board on a bunch of key performance metrics. So big question then is going to be, how do you do social prospecting? And Coca's already mentioned, monitor, listen, and engage. But first, you kind of have to figure out where your customers are. Where do your key targets reside, on what platforms? And one of the interesting stats I found in regards to LinkedIn versus, say, a Facebook or even Twitter was just in income alone. LinkedIn users have such a high income, I think it was over 100,000, versus Facebook, which had only 25,000 average income per user. So what that really is telling us is that Facebook is really a younger audience, more for a B2C target, whereas LinkedIn and even Twitter's average income was double that of Facebook at 52. So, for a B2B establishment, I think Twitter and LinkedIn are going to be your best places to start with monitoring and listening, and then engaging with your prospects. I've had a couple of examples myself, and we see some here from InsideView, where you guys really took this to the full letter of the law there, in which you were monitoring what was being said, heard what was being said from Ross there, Coca, and then engaged with him appropriately.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. I mean, we just happened to log in. I think it was one of my associates here log in early in the morning, just to kind of get a feel for what was going on before he walked in the office, and he saw this tweet. So, I mean, it really comes down to listening. It's not like he had, initially asked about us, but we picked it up when he mentioned a competitor, and we kind of monitor it, and then a couple minutes later he mentioned us, and that's when we jumped in. Then he eventually became a customer. Later on, it was a very short sales cycle. But this goes right back to the statistic you said before regarding the first person to jump on that lead is typically the one that wins the deal. And in this case, we jumped on it within minutes, grabbed it, and because he hadn't gone out and made phone calls and RFPs and started looking for, a provider, he was just mentioning this online. These other companies didn't jump in on him and didn't see. Well, I guess they weren't listening. So he really had no other way to go because he's a busy guy and he didn't want to go tracking down all these vendors to get stuff priced out. So he went with us. We, as I said, we drink our own champagne here, and we said, hey, this is what we do. We teach this stuff. This is the application you want to use, and he ended up becoming a customer.
Yeah, and that's a great example of really a benefit. And also another real popular one is PGI, an account rep at PGI, which does web conferencing software, was doing a search, as we referenced earlier with HootSuite, and I'll talk about a little bit more here in a minute, where he did a keyword search and saw somebody from an organization talking about their distaste for web conferencing. He immediately calls up the organization, asks who's in charge of social media, and gets referred to the CEO. Immediately he engages with the CEO and talking about web conferencing, and within I think it was about 4 hours or so, he had a signed contract and had closed a deal. So because he was able to monitor using a keyword search and listen to what was being said and then engage by calling, finding out who led the charge on the social media front, got in touch with the right person, and then had a closed deal within, like I said, about 4 hours. So that really exemplifies the idea of monitoring, listening, and engaging.
Yeah, and stories like this come up a lot. There's only so many that we use within our own case studies. Obviously this is a really powerful one to use, but some of them, these have really short sales cycles, whereas some of them are a little bit more drawn-out conversations that last over a period of days or weeks. But I tell the sales teams that I talk to internally, and then some of our customers, the money is out there. People are opening their wallets on a site like Twitter and saying, I'm ready to spend some money. Who should I go with? And I think it's a salesperson's responsibility to be monitoring for those conversations.
Yeah, you're right on there. And I mean, I've had another personal experience where working with a client, we had somebody tweet out something very straightforward to the point where they said, hey, hashtag with the company name, where do I sign up? And if I hadn't been monitoring the Twitter channels and using those keyword searches, we would never have seen that. So, and talk about a short sales cycle. I mean, we immediately gave it to the appropriate rep. He reached out and he had a closed deal within a couple hours. So, and that kind of leads back to what we said earlier, where people are so informed now, thanks to social media channels and the amount of information that's available, that they're so far down the process while the time sales engages. And this is just another example where if we weren't monitoring that, then we would have missed out on some more business.
Absolutely.
So, all right, so another tool here, again, I said I was going to talk about LinkedIn a little bit. The LinkedIn updates feature is something that I really enjoy using, and I use this a lot personally, as well as I use also, which I would recommend, is using the groups and the answers tab. But what LinkedIn updates does is it uses the LinkedIn signal feature, in which it's giving you access to filter the updates from LinkedIn professionals who are choosing to make their updates visible, or public, but it gives you access to really browse in real time the updates that are being said, content summaries, to show keywords, topics, companies, and people across the stream of what you're searching for. It's a great tool. Again, it goes back to real time, and that's something you'll probably hear me say a lot anyways, the effect of having real-time access to information, data, and intelligence. And I think using the updates feature of LinkedIn is a great example of that, as well as doing the same with the answers and then groups. I'm definitely a big proponent of sales reps joining as many groups as possible on LinkedIn that are relevant to your industry. I think that's another great way, and that also kind of leads into nurturing as well, but it's a great way to see what's being said in your industry and in your communities, and the answer tab is another great way just to monitor for active opportunities if somebody's asking questions regarding your product or your industry.
There's a question in regards to the Twitter example about how did we find that tweet. I mean, there's many different ways we kind of monitor the internet internally. Some of it's based on just keywords. The hard part, and I don't know if Hoover's did this on purpose, I'm assuming they didn't because they've been around forever, is that there's vacuum cleaners, there's the Hoover's Dam, there's an airport, so it's very difficult to monitor just that keyword. But if you use a little Boolean searching to find information, so you can get some context around it, depending on the competitor you're going after, you can refine these searches pretty tight. Sites like HootSuite, the tools like HootSuite and Sprout, and I believe even like a tool like TweetDeck, you're able to have and or statements within them, and you're able to really refine this information. So any salesperson, regardless of what industry you're in, you should be able to target prospecting or your prospects leveraging a tool like Twitter fairly easily.
Yeah, and I would always recommend starting with doing a search on your own company itself. See what people are saying out there about your company specifically. And in some cases, like in that case, the example that you shared, InsideView, I think was in the tweet. So that's another way that you're going to be able to find these pieces of gold, so to speak, in the Twitterverse.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some don'ts.
Yeah, and these are some pretty big don'ts, and on LinkedIn you're going to see this a lot, and it's unfortunate that people don't realize that this really does not work. But I mean, the key is you can't be salesy. You can't be self-promoting your product or yourself. It's not going to come across well. It's going to really turn off your prospects. What you need to be doing is creating value or adding value to the conversation. And that's what's going to help establish you as a trusted advisor or somebody relevant, an expert, so to speak, in the field. It's certainly not about going and saying, hey, my product does this, why don't you talk to me or let's talk. It's more about answering the question from an unbiased perspective and not coming across again as salesy. You got to eliminate the sales pitches on social prospect or on social networks. It just doesn't work. And I laughed at seeing this slide with the results. Yeah, I can definitely say don't ever use a $sign as an S when you're replying to somebody. That's just not going to work either.
Yeah, I mean, the best practice that we have found is really to add value. Some of the best deals, some of the quickest, the accelerated deals that we've gotten internally are from groups discussions or questions that are being asked where our sales reps go in there and literally just answer the question, even if it doesn't have to do with our product or our industry. You have some level of expertise, every salesperson does in some area, or some knowledge that they can share. So use these networks for what they're intended for, add value. And what you'll find is as you continue to add value, it pays back. If somebody's asking a question about the best tools you use and they're mentioning your company, like in the example of this one, answer the question honestly. And I think we have another slide here that kind of goes into this in a little more detail.
Yep, this is going to go into the do's, and again, you're a great example here of doing it, and we do this a lot with our organization. Is what we'll do is when we find somebody asking a question that is relevant to our service or product, we don't aggressively answer it ourselves. What we'll do is we'll find somebody who's a friend of ours, meaning they've worked with us in the past or believe in what our solution does and our services do, and we'll ask them if they might be able to comment on this. I think that's a great way of getting introduced to the prospect without coming across as salesy at all. And then what you see below is first we had Bob Marsh put in his 2 cents, so to speak, on the question, but then Coca was able to come back, and it goes back to what we were just saying, provide more value to the response by not pitching his product. And in fact, in this response, you see he also suggests another company for certain situations, but it's adding value to that conversation and being known as somebody who could be an expert in that field without actually pitching what you do.
Yeah, and another best practice when it comes to the do's is be transparent. Like for example, I mentioned the fact that I work with InsideView. Obviously, you could do a little digging and find that out. but you want to be transparent. You want to say who you work for, but you always want to add value. So going back to the slide before, the don'ts is don't make it a hard sale. Don't pitch the product. Just add value to the conversation, and what you're going to find is that people are going to value that conversation that you're having. The reason why I mentioned, I do this every so often. I used to do it a whole lot more, but I don't do it as much as I should. Where I'll go into these conversations and I'll find people asking about data providers. Obviously InsideView can provide the data, but the product is really based around the intelligence around the data. So that's why you throw it out there. If the data, quote unquote, is really what people are looking for, here's some suggested people you should go talk to. And I think that's where most prospects start seeing you as an individual thought leader. We have reps here that have been in sales for 3 or 4 years that go in and really share a lot of information that they've come across, what they've collected over the years, and they've really set themselves up as being kind of thought leaders in the space, even though they're very junior in their careers. They're building that reputation where, hey, if somebody has a question, they know who to go to, and I think that's what every salesperson should really strive for on a professional level, is being able to become one of those thought leaders.
Yeah, and you know what, I personally, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I ask a lot of questions, or I engage a lot in response to questions asked. And anytime somebody's going to respond, if you like their response, what's the first thing you usually do? It's going to be you're going to go check. Exactly, yeah. You're going to check out their profile. So that goes into being transparent. You're not going to be able to hide the fact that you work for a company that can help this person. They're going to realize that rather quickly once they see your response. So there's no need to include that in your response. And it sounds repetitive, but you got to go back to adding value in that response. Let them do the research itself. Click on your profile and say, oh, okay, Coca here is involved in sales intelligence, and so maybe that's a great place for me to start when researching possible solutions for my pains.
Absolutely. Let me double check something really quick. I'm going to make sure there's no questions about that.
Yep.
Dave asked the question, isn't another don't not to degrade or badmouth your competition? That's also a turn off. I think it's a best practice across the board. I mean, as a salesperson, you should always avoid it in a public setting like a social network or on the phone. If it never looks good or sounds good to a prospect when you're bad-mouthing your competition. If nothing else, that's going to make them wonder, why do they hate these guys so much? There must be something to them. We've gotten some great business from our competitors that have said, oh, you don't want that InsideView product, because then the customer thinks, wait, maybe I want to look at that product. If they find them as much competition, maybe that's something worth investigating. So you never want to do that, especially not within a social network, because it then becomes a turnoff. People are like, hey, I don't want to listen to this guy that's always going to be bad-mouthing other companies. Every company is good in their own aspect, and if you have value to add to it, that's what you need to be able to express.
Yeah, and that's something with all our internal reps here, that's something we preach religiously, is that you don't badmouth, whether it be on the phone or through email or whatever means of communication that you're having with your prospects. Because all that really is going to do is devalue what you're saying, and doing exactly what Coke was just mentioning, where it's almost going to push them more to go and engage with your competition, because they want to find out, why is he saying so much about them. So I don't recommend it, whether it be on the phone. I don't recommend it in person, and I certainly don't recommend that practice on social media sites. The other thing when it comes to that is, once it's down there, there's really no taking it back. So yeah, you can delete a tweet, but somebody can capture that really quickly, and then you're going to be stuck with that. So it's certainly a huge don't, but I think that's more of a across the board, like we said.
Let me see here really quick. What do you guys use internally there? Somebody was asking. Kathleen was asking a question. Do we prefer HootSuite or TweetDeck? I'll let you answer that internally, and then I'll have to give my question.
We've tried both. So I gotta say though, I'm a huge HootSuite proponent. I love what some of the features that HootSuite has. I specifically love Hootlet, which goes into the bulk scheduling. Of course, I mean, I have the responsibility of managing, I think it's up to 9 or 10 social media accounts now. So being able to use the Hootlet app is huge for me. But the other thing that I use a lot is going to be the keyword monitoring on my streams. And I've maxed out my stream level on a couple different where I have to open new streams, and I was going to go into a little further, so I'll save some of that. But definitely, to me, it's HootSuite, and I love the analytics that I get.
And they have a really cute owl as an icon.
Well, you know, you can't go wrong anytime you have an owl in there as well.
This is true. This is true.
The tool itself, though, I do prefer. My VP actually used TweetDeck for a while, and he has since, thanks to my urging, I guess, has moved over to HootSuite as well. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know about what you guys use, though, Coca.
Yeah, we use a combination. I mean, because of all the stuff that we do online, we were always testing out different platforms. You know, I really enjoy HootSuite. It was probably one of the first tools I use on a professional level for leveraging social streams. Because of the monitoring stuff that we're able to get through Sprout, so we use a kind of a hybrid of both. Many of the team uses Sprout Social and HootSuite in different different tasks that they're doing. I had used TweetDeck in the past, but again, I kind of just got really comfortable and familiar with HootSuite, so we just stuck with that between those two. So internally, we use HootSuite and Sprout Social for any of the engagements that we have. And here's some really good information coming up here.
Yeah, now we've kind of touched base a bit on this a little bit, but maybe we can elaborate a little bit more when it comes to prospecting utilizing Twitter. Now, I actually develop internal lists using the data or intelligence that I capture from Twitter. So I'll find prospects and new targeted prospects through using the keyword searches on Twitter to develop some of our internal lists for our CDRs to call into or prospect into. But one of the other big features that I really love with Twitter is going to be the actual internal list feature that Twitter has that then is also capable of working with HootSuite. But the way I break it down is I'll have lists for my prospects. I have lists for customers. I have lists for my competitors. And then one of my favorite things to do is to group all the Twitter users that I find into one list of that company. And what that does is that gives me the ability to really see what's being said throughout the company in, whether it be the C-level, VP levels, or even just some of your network admins and so forth. It really gives you a great idea on what the company is saying, what their needs are, any pain points. So that's one of my favorite things to do is to really group, and that obviously that's going to happen when you have larger companies with a lot of employees on Twitter, but I think that's a great list to develop utilizing the Twitter social outlet. Keyword searches. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to talk about lists for a second. I think that's one of the most undervalued functionalities of the platform, and you gave some really good examples. Internally, when we train on social selling tactics with our customers, that's one of the things that most people, even though they may be familiar with Twitter, or even the most active Twitter users that we've come across, they still don't understand how to leverage lists. Social Selling University has a video on how to do this, and there's been some additional training modules that have been put around Social Selling University in this. But the idea that you can create a list of your top prospects, your best customers, your friends, whatever this is, you build these lists within Twitter, and then you can set up individual streams just to follow those lists. And again, you can plug these lists into HootSuite or Sprout Social or whatever client you're using as well. You can make these lists private so that the people on the list don't even know they're on it, and the outside world isn't able to see these lists. So you have a running list of prospects that's left as private. You're the only one that can actually monitor that information. And you get a lot of good feedback. You get to see what people are doing and feeling and talking about, so you can really stay engaged with these prospects.
Yeah, and something you said there too, the fact that you make it private, that is important, and you want to make sure when you're putting your customers into a list that is a private list. You certainly don't want your competitors to be able to access that list and see who your current customers are. You may want to keep your competitors in a private list as well. So that's something you definitely keep an eye on, and I highly recommend you keep some of these lists very private so only you can see it, and the other lists you make public, and that is not as big of a deal, but definitely keeping some of those private is going to be very important.
Absolutely.
So now we talked also a little bit about keyword searches too, and how we referenced how we found some of those tweets earlier, and the Twitter search feature is another huge asset to any sales rep who's prospecting using social media. And then this kind of translates to HootSuite again, and I'm sure they'll love us over there because we're saying it so much, but I just love the features that HootSuite has where I could use the keyword searches. And I know that you can max it out. I think it's 3 keywords per stream that you have, but what you do is you just end up creating more streams. So currently I have 5 streams going of 15 keywords that I'm monitoring daily, and that goes really into the power of real-time access to all the intelligence that's putting out there, and then goes back to what we said before, where 35 to 50% of the sales are going to close based on the first vendor that reaches out. So this is just another tool that you're going to want to use and leverage in getting real-time access to that information and being able to respond accordingly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're amazing tools, and if you're not using a tool internally now, the attendees on this webinar, you should take a look at both. You should take a look at HootSuite and Sprout and kind of see what fits best within your organization, because you're going to find that they all have their pros and cons, and depending on how much you really want to get into the weeds about leveraging these social networks, you're going to find one of the tools that works best for you.
Yeah, and a lot of this is based on your own personal preference. With me personally, I preferred the HootSuite application. I'm not familiar with Social Sprout, so I can't knock on that because I don't know it as well. I'm a little more familiar with TweetDeck, but when it came down to it, I loved the user ability that HootSuite had with it, and the ease of use, I should say, more than anything. And I just think it's a great tool that every sales rep or organization should be utilizing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no doubt. And I mean, it's a free product, so anybody can sign up for this and start using it, right now, which is another great benefit of it.
Yeah. So, and then that last point, real quick, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on trigger events, but with social prospecting, doing the keyword searches, having your lists in place of prospects, customers, competitors, and the companies that you're targeting, you're able to monitor what's being said, and you're looking for trigger events in which that opens the door for you to engage. And again, I'll go into that a little bit more here in a minute.
So let's talk about nurturing leads.
Yeah. So this is another area that, lead nurturing is becoming a big deal when it comes to inbound marketing and such. So with social nurturing, it's very similar to what you might be seeing from lead nurturing, in which you're really helping guide prospects down a specific path based on their specific behaviors that they have demonstrated. You're able to identify potential buyers, follow their behaviors using trigger events to identify the best time for you to engage with the prospect. And really what social nurturing is doing is allowing you to stay visible to your targeted prospects and keeping you on their radar so that when there is a need, you are their first thought. So that's one of the big basics to social nurturing. And in this area, we start to see the line's going to blur between sales and marketing. If you're online, you're engaged on social media outlets, you really aren't necessarily a sales rep, you're not necessarily in marketing. What you are is more of a customer advocate. You're looking to initiate conversation with prospects, You want to be seen as the expert in your field, and that goes back to providing value in the conversations that you're having and not just pitching your product. And then you're utilizing multiple departments from your organization, whether it be, marketing, R&D, or product management. But it's all of these are coming together to provide the content needed to help your prospect really progress down the funnel. And social sites and social outlets are just a great avenue to do that. They're great for sharing content, they're great for engaging with prospects, and for nurturing them.
Yeah, I got a quick question. This is actually coming from Twitter by Ryan. He asked the question, do you try and balance keeping the work profiles as personable as your personal one? How do you address that? Do you have different profiles for work in personal use, let's say on Twitter?
I do not, and there are reasons why, which I'll explain in a minute, because that's a great question, and it's one that I field all the time from our internal employees. We actually have a social media team that we ask the employees to join if they have an interest in doing and learning these things. And one of the first questions the people ask is, should they have a personal or should they have a professional? I personally think it shows more character keeping it all in one. There's nothing wrong with having your professional as well as your personal account being the same account. I think it shows more character.
As long as you're an ethical person in person also.
Right. Well, obviously there's lines that you got to be careful with in what you're tweeting out, what you're saying. But I personally am a proponent of just keeping it one. And I think when it comes to prospecting or nurturing, some of the biggest advantages, I've talked about leveraging social intelligence. And a great example, I'll use myself as a great example of this. If you look me up on LinkedIn and then you also look me up on Twitter, you're going to find out a couple things from looking at my profile. You're going to see that first you're going to know the company I work for and my position, obviously, but you're also going to see from my Twitter profile that I have 2 boys, in which I say, my poor wife, she'll say she has 3 boys, including myself, but, so
she's probably right.
She probably is, but that's fine. But no, you'll see that I have 2 boys and I'm obviously married. You'll also see from my Twitter profile that I am a big Cleveland sports fan. By looking at my LinkedIn profile, you will see that I spend a lot of time in the hospitality industry, mainly working in the golf industry up and down the East Coast at some of the nicer country clubs here. But all that is great intelligence for a sales rep to learn before they go into a call with me. If somebody wants to endear themselves to me and be more memorable, when they hop on that call, of course, if they don't want me to go with them, maybe they'll bring up the Cleveland Browns, and take a shot at me that way. But you see where you're able to leverage the data or the intelligence that comes from those profiles and use that in building a relationship. And so that's why I think it's really important to kind of keep them together as opposed to doing both a professional and then a personal one. Plus, who really wants to have to worry about managing 2 different profiles? I mean, me personally, it's takes enough of my time managing one, let alone 2. So that's my opinion. Coca, I don't know what your view is on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at anybody who knows me, follows me on social media, knows that I control many profiles, but everything is pretty much under my own brand. It's all under Coca Sexton. But I can understand. It's taken me a while because I'm so ingrained in it that I've always felt the same way as you, that individuals should just maintain one identity. But over the years, I've learned and I've understood the concerns by salespeople that maybe it's worth them having 2. And many companies actually have policies around this where you're not allowed to use, or you shouldn't use your individual Twitter profile for work. They'll set one up for you. So you'll find some companies that have Twitter profiles that say, let's say Kevin at InsideView or Kevin _InsideView, or I think actually HootSuite, for example, has these, and Sprout Social. In fact, a lot of these social companies are where I started learning a lot of these best practices, where they have individual profiles that are separate from the personal profiles for the employees, where they have their professional conversations. And I can see the pros and cons on both sides. It took me a while to understand why somebody would want to have a different brand, but at the end of the day, I think it's a personal choice. And my firm belief is that you just need to be involved. You need to have a profile up there. Ideally, you have it all under one house, but if you're going to have it under two and you think you can manage that, then do it. But at the end of the day, you have to become a part of the conversation.
Yeah, because what the other thing you're going to see in a lot of profiles, you see views are my own, and so that kind of goes into
as if they're going to be anybody else's.
Right. First of all, that's the first question. Who else do you think?
Yeah.
But that's also in regards to, because now the thing is, do you have a social media policy in place for your organization? So that's, I guess, supposed to be the legal way around being held accountable for what you're saying, meaning that you're not speaking for the organization, you're only speaking for yourself. So again, it's a personal preference, and as I said, mine is, I say just throw it all in one, and it shows more character.
Yeah, and that being said, I just want to throw the word out of caution here. If you have two different profiles, you have your personal and then you have one for business. The reality is that if you're still using your name, people are going to be able to find both profiles.
Yep.
So you still have to be careful about what you say on your personal profile, because it's still out there, and people may not immediately know that you work for XYZ company, but it's not going to be hard for them to find out. So always the word of caution. Whatever you put online is available for anybody in the world to see. So just always be aware of that.
Yep, I agree with that.
Ready for the next slide, or are we still moving through this?
No, I'd say based on time, we'll move through.
All right.
So I'll be brief here on this one, talking about the building communities, and you guys there at Social Selling are a great example of this. And this leads more to being the expert in your field. And the other example, Trish Bertuzzi, who's located here in the Boston area with us,
Trish.
Did a great job of capitalizing on an opportunity, if you ask me. She developed the group Inside Sales Experts, and so now she's the manager of that group. But what it did was it helped establish her as the expert when it came to inside sales questions. And now, I don't know the exact numbers, but I can tell you that that's one of the stronger sales groups on LinkedIn. And that's just a great example of taking an opportunity to create a group without really self-promoting or selling your services, but being looked at as somebody that people will go to when they need responses in that industry. And as I said, Social Selling University is another great example of that. In fact, I remember it wasn't that long ago that you guys created that group on LinkedIn. And so that's another great example, as well as, HubSpot does the same with their inbound marketing group. So that's just another way when it comes to nurturing, is you're putting yourself out there without pitching your product and waiting for the prospects to really come to you when they're ready to engage at the right time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, Trish is a big friend of the company. I'm a fan of hers and all the work that she's put out through the Bridge Group. But, her group, she's no nonsense. If she's very, and to her credit, that's why the group has grown in such successes over the last few years, because that group is solely designed to have valuable conversations about inside sales practice. If you're trying to spam that group, if you're trying to do questionable things within the group, she bans you. This is a great group for you to be a part of. Yeah, it's a great group for anybody to be a part of.
She's on top of that and does a great job of keeping the spam out of there. And that's what it's supposed to be for. It's supposed to be a discussion forum. And again, it's about creating value or adding value to the subject matter.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I know we already kind of talked about trigger events, so some people might be asking, what are trigger events? And so here you see a great list, and I know InsideView has a great feature with their solution that adds this component into the intelligent feature of it. But your trigger events are going to include anything from a management change to a new partnership, or maybe you have a promotion, or any just comments that's being made on the networking sites. And what trigger events, the biggest value to me with trigger events is it opens the door for engagement. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a chance just to say, hey, Coca, congratulations on launching social I'm just making an announcement congratulating you on the change and the success. And
yeah, and to that point, I don't know if we have. I believe the slides aren't in here, but if you've been on other SSU webinars, the people that are attending this, you'll know that I use this example a lot. We have a couple very social sales people here in the company, one of which is named Megan, and she has made it. We've baked it into our best practices guide, where she will monitor watch lists for trigger events. She will find news about companies, do a little bit of research to find out either the individual she needs to communicate with or the brand on Twitter, and she'll communicate directly to that individual or brand and with a link to the news article. Congratulations on expanding operations. Congratulations on the new job. Congratulations on your funding. And she has built her pipeline leveraging a tool like Twitter, and just by sharing news that the company may already know, because obviously they're putting out the press release. But it's the fact that as a salesperson, you are that in tune with the lockstep with the information around a company that you get their attention, and then they want to know more.
Yeah, totally agree. There's tremendous value in monitoring these trigger events and utilizing them to engage with prospects, and definitely needs to be something that should be included in any sales reps prospecting strategies.
So there's another question in here. I'm going to say it's Jamie. Asked the question about leveraging Twitter as a social nurturing tool for prospecting, for outbound prospecting. Like, how often do you think it's okay? What's the daily usage is how they put it, of using your profile for outbound prospecting? And I've got my own input, but I want to get your insights as well on this.
Well, when it comes, prospecting with, all right, so I can give you a real great example of a big don't when it comes to prospecting on Twitter. And this just happened yesterday, so if I had the chance, I would have put it in here. But a friend of ours here, Robert Turson, who does Selling Fearlessly, I had done a guest blog post on his site. It was getting shared across Twitter, and Bob was doing his part in thanking everybody that was tweeting it out. So this one company retweeted it, and Bob did his thing and saying thank you, and the company tweeted right back to him saying, anytime, Bob, I would love to give you a demo of my product. And so Bob immediately responded with, company name, how about you get to know me first before you start pitching your product to me? And so that's a great example of what you should not be doing on Twitter when it comes to nurturing. It's about building a relationship with your prospects first, and it's going to come naturally that they see what you do. When you've retweeted somebody so many times, or you've asked them or engaged in conversation with them through Twitter so many times, they're naturally going to go and look and check you out. They're going to see what company we are with, or organization, and what types of products you have. And this goes back to what we said with LinkedIn and looking at their profiles, and that's a natural human reaction for somebody that you've engaged with numerous times, for them to see where you are coming from or what your background consists of. So when it comes to nurturing, my recommendation is more about retweeting the big names in your industry, those that everybody knows about. You retweet them, you engage with them, and it's not just pushing the tweet button, but it's more about putting a comment before you put their article, like, I love this read, it was a great read, or and Trish is another one that does a great job with this. She'll kind of surmise the article in her tweet and then tweet the link. But that's the better way of doing it when it comes to nurturing, because that really shows that you're engaged, you're listening or reading what they're putting out there, and then you add your own 2 cents into it. So that's my recommendation when it comes to nurturing is, retweet and engage with the people that you want to, and don't push your product right off the bat just because you get a reply from someone.
Yeah, and the only thing I would really add to that, in regards to the daily usage, it's Twitter. Don't be overbearing, but it's a platform. Use it. just like email and the phone and everything else. You don't want to come across as, a pushy person, but leverage the tool. I mean, as I just gave in the example of Megan, I mean, that's what she does during the day. She'll find companies and she spends, she'll send 10, 15, 20, maybe even more tweets a day to these companies mentioning things that they're mentioned in the blog or in news. Or she'll read a blog article on an individual and, say at so-and-so, hey, just read this recent blog article by you, I really liked it. I mean, you use the tool without being too pushy. As long as you're continuing to add value and validate other people's positions, I think it's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so this last thing, I wanted to touch upon social scoring briefly, and this is somewhat of a newer concept, and the folks at Awareness Inc. are the ones that I pulled this screenshot from, but what social scoring really is, and it goes into social prospecting and nurturing as well, but it really is a powerful concept that will enable sales reps, marketers, or whoever's online to target leads or potential buyers, as well as define a rule-based criteria, which you see in front of you, that define the influencers within your own target audience. So this is a great example. Prospect has engaged with Company X's Twitter account, so that's worth 10 points. If they have a VP in their profile, that might be worth higher points than, say, a manager, wouldn't be as high a point value. If you're located in the U.S., and again, depending on what your product is and what your target area is, you can dictate what the point value is for that. What this does is it's defining the behaviors of your prospects that are going to indicate really a likelihood of them buying. And it also is going to give you an idea of when you should be engaging with them for the sales process. So it's a newer concept that I think more and more organizations are going to start investing in this type of concept, and it's something I ran across at a conference recently, and I really enjoyed learning more about it, and I think you're going to see more and more of this sprouting up, so to speak, with social scoring. I think it's a great way for figuring out the best time to engage your prospects.
This is amazing. I mean, I think this will eventually become one of the next best practices when it comes to scoring of leads. We're investigating how to do that internally, but this is a great foundation of how to build that. Not just are they engaging with your content, but are they engaging with your brand within these social channels, I think is going to be another leading indicator to revenue.
Yeah, I agree. And just like lead scoring has become very mainstream now with a lot of the marketing automation tools and tools that are out there. But I think you'll see social scoring is going to be the next kind of evolution in the social selling process as well.
Absolutely.
So with this one, I'm going to just touch briefly on this. If you guys want to read the quotes there, by all means, please do. But what I really wanted to focus on was the bottom there, that last bit of the quote. And if you're not familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, I definitely recommend, if you get the opportunity to see him speak, he's definitely worth the time to listen. And
he's worth every dime, even. The guy's brilliant in person.
He is, and I warn you though, don't go in with virgin ears.
Yeah, this is true.
You're going to hear a lot of words that you normally won't be allowed to hear on TV. But with that said, it is definitely worth the time and investment to go and hear him talk. And he really sums it up with that end of the quote there on what social nurturing is, which is, that's what caring first, not selling first looks like, and that's how I built my brand. And what it's referring to is what he did was he engaged people by not selling himself. He just provided value. When somebody asked about a Merlot, he would suggest a great Merlot for somebody to check out or to pair with, a great steak. And, somebody else he found talking about Chardonnay. So, again, he added value to that conversation. And not once was he promoting his own company or organization. He was just adding value to the conversation. Eventually, people started to realize that, hey, this guy sells wine, and as you see, he has free shipping. So, and at that point, it took off for him. But that concept of caring first and not selling first is really what social nurturing is about. And so I just really wanted to emphasize that quote and that part of the quote from Gary.
Yeah, and the book in the bottom right-hand corner there, it's called The Thank You Economy. I've read it a couple of times. I think that for anybody in sales, I mean, this is still good information because this really starts outlining the kind of a lot of the etiquette around how to go about leveraging social media. And he talks about it from a sales and a marketing standpoint because as the owner of his own business, he kind of wears both of those hats. But it really comes down to just adding value, as you mentioned. You can tell from the statistics and the data that's now being brought out by other companies that this is the best practice of how to leverage social media.
Yep.
Let's go through some of the ROI, and I can go through these. So one of the things that comes up around social selling and leveraging social media in a sales environment is what does that ROI look like? And there's some great case studies out there. So for example, James Philibert, we came across his success story. I think he had written a blog about it. But he was a one-man show. He grew his company, and now he's up to $5 million in annual revenue. And he finds it all through social networks. 75% of it is coming through a network like LinkedIn. You can leverage these tools to make money, especially on a very shoestring budget, whereas in his case, he had no marketing budget. eCycler is another example we like to give. This was a company that was basically recycling goods, and it's a very commoditized business. But what he started doing, the owner of this company would go online and look for people talking about their junk. And he would then go and engage with them online and as a service, take care of their junk for them. That started getting him mentioned in news, like local press, and then even national news, because he became the guy that you would go to on Twitter and talk about needing to get rid of your junk. And let's talk about another customer of HootSuite. It's called Aurora Healthcare. I mean, this is about a doctor. So we're talking about many different industries here, about how individuals and companies are leveraging tools to make money. This doctor was an orthopedic surgeon. He would really just get online and start talking about orthopedics, orthopedic surgery. He started getting a lot of questions. He started tweeting during surgeries. And he started finding that a lot of people with these issues would then reach out to him on Twitter because they were able to follow him in a search stream and ask them questions. As you can tell at the bottom bullet point here, a 15% conversion rate from lead to customer from this. People were asking questions. He was engaged. He wasn't pitching his individual doctor's office. But at the end of the day, people wanted to do business with him because they saw him as the expert, because he was the one most vocal and the one with all the information. Do you want to go through this one, Jonathan, or do you want me to take it?
Well, I mean, this kind of goes back to what I shared, I think, originally from the Aberdeen Group study. But, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, and I think we've kind of showed that throughout the webinar here today, that the sales reps that are using social selling, 79% versus 15% are achieving their fiscal year quotas. And that's because they're able to do exactly what we're saying, which is monitoring their industries and their environments. They're listening to what's being said, and then at the right time they're engaging with the prospect when the prospect's ready to be engaged in the sales process. The biggest stat to me there, with the industry average at 43% of sales reps attaining quota, and you see that using social selling, you're looking at 79%. So, that increase is phenomenal, and I think that's one of the best stats that shows why social selling is going to work, why you're going to see an increase in revenue, why you're going to see more reps hitting quota, because of the ability to respond in real time and to respond at the right time.
Absolutely. So let's go through. I'm going to go through and see if there's any additional questions that we haven't gotten to yet. Give me just a second.
Mm-hmm. I want to just point out something on Twitter that I saw from, I think it's Anushka had mentioned when we talked about personal versus professional use on Twitter. She says she uses Twitter only for professional branding and Facebook for personal. That's something that I'm definitely on board with. Facebook to me is something that's very personal, and I don't just friend anybody out there. So I totally agree with that sentiment personally. I think Twitter is great for branding professionally and yourself. But Facebook, again, because to me that's more a B2C environment anyway, so I keep that more as personal. So I totally agree with you, Anushka, on that comment.
And I'll close out with this. It doesn't look like there's any other questions, but in regards to Facebook, one of the things that we do within InsideView, we can plug into your Facebook profile. And a lot of companies said, well, what's the value of that? Because of that exact reason. And we have a really interesting story that came out of one of our employees where a prospect had gone dark, which they sometimes do towards the end of the month. It was a deal that was forecasted in. We couldn't get a hold of the decision maker. He was either really busy or dodging us. Our sales VP at the time pulled up the account in our CRM, looked at the InsideView profile and said, hey, I'm connected to somebody at that company through Facebook. Found out it was some old high school friend, which again is a personal relationship. You just connected with old high school people just to keep in contact throughout the years. Didn't realize that she worked at this company, and all the stars aligned. She actually worked right next to where this guy sat within like a few desks. And he reached out to her and said, hey, I know it's been a few years since we've communicated. I just noticed that you work at this company. We're actually trying to work on a deal. I'm trying to get a hold of this decision maker. Is it possible? Do you even know if he's in the office? He got a phone call from this decision maker within 15 minutes because of that connection. Connections, leveraging your connections will exponentially grow your ability to increase revenue for your company. And the only way to do that is to look at connections across all of your networks. It's not just a matter of looking at your connections across one network, let's say like LinkedIn. It's one about creating, looking at all of the connections across all of your social networks.
Yeah, totally.
And there will obviously be some overlap. But that's just one use case. But in most cases, you're right. In many cases, it's a very personal network, and the chances of that happening are pretty small. But when it does happen, it's golden. Because if you have a personal connection on Facebook with somebody, the chances of that person helping you out is much higher than just somebody that you've connected with on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and that really goes back to the relationships that you can leverage through social media outlets and how to leverage that in a business or professional capacity.
So if that is it doesn't look like there's any other questions. Again, Jonathan, thank you so much for helping us put this together. And to all the attendees, I appreciate you being on the webinar today. And
thank you for having me on here, Coca. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry we kept people a little bit longer, but as you can tell, I think we're both very passionate regarding social media outlets and using them in a professional way. So, and I hope it was informative for everybody that was on. And
an email will go out to everybody with a link to the recording soon. So again, thank you everyone. Thank you, Jonathan, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.